Milwaukee Bucks fans, welcome back to Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. I'm your host, Dean Simon. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. If you'd see a little guy behind me, he's joining me for the show, my co-host for today, Max. Max, say hi. Yeah, good boy. Okay, so this first segment, um, I think it's kind of interesting because I thought that the Giannis ongoing trade rumors, the trade saga, all that stuff was behind us, at least going into the preseason, into training camp, and then into the regular season. But apparently not. Apparently, these kinds of things, these kinds of updates are sticking around because Shams Charania recently made a TV appearance and he talked about the future of Giannis Antetokounmpo, basically saying that it's still very much uncertain. Nothing is set in stone. And he said, and I quote, "Sources tell me there is nothing set in stone about whether Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to stay in Milwaukee or whether he wants to leave to go elsewhere. He has been evaluating his future this entire offseason." He would later go on to say, "That process has been continuing. There has been some real conversations he's having with his inner circle, from my understanding. And the one big question that is surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo, surrounding his camp, is can you win another championship?" Then he says, "There are multiple teams that I know of that are literally waiting right now on what decision Giannis Antetokounmpo makes, waiting to see does he actually hit the market." It's pretty crazy to me that this stuff is kind of droning on and that Shams had enough to come out with another little tidbit of information that, it kind of goes without saying that teams are waiting hand and foot trying to make an offer, make an actual run at Giannis if he were to become available, excuse me, on the trade market. That again, it goes without saying. The question of can Giannis win another championship? Obviously, we can gather that, regardless of how optimistic Bucks fans can be, that the answer is probably no, not with this group. That, can he win a championship? It's as if, Shams asking that is just begging people to say, no, of course not. And then, the rumor mill is going to start to get circulated again. Oh my God, like the team isn't good enough. Giannis is definitely out of there. Just having to even ask that question when we know that the roster isn't the caliber that it could be, it's not completely meaningless. It doesn't not have any innate value, but this update, I feel like we could have went without it because a guy like Giannis, he's been very, won't say dodgy with the media and with his uh, thoughts towards potentially requesting a trade, but he has been kind of on and off, given indications to the Bucks front office that hey, if you don't do what I want to do, if you don't build this great contender, that, I could easily look elsewhere for opportunities. And he's made that very, very apparent over the past, not just a couple of months, but the past couple of years. So I won't say that this update was, you know, not for any reason at all, but it's kind of stuff that we already knew. And I don't know, I feel as though sure, you can still label Giannis's immediate future, at least not for 25, 26, but 26, 27, and beyond. You could still certainly label that as uncertain, but I feel like it's stuff that we had already known. Speaking of going into 25, 26, ESPN bet, they came out with their over under win totals or win figures for all 30 NBA teams, and the Bucks over under total number for wins was set at 42 and a half, which is incredibly, incredibly low, considering that number one, the team won 48 games last year and they remain a deep, deep roster. And sure, you factor in the inclusion of younger guys like Ryan Rollins who are going to get a little bit more of a shot to contribute in this lineup, and that maybe the chemistry will be a little bit off with adding so many, well, not so many new guys into the picture, but guys like Cole Anthony and of course Myles Turner that are going to make a difference, and Gary Harris too, that are going to be real contributors for this team that they're going to have to just get involved with the culture and with the team, and just playing with Giannis is like not a challenge in its own right, but just it's something that you have to get used to. All these guys are going to have to, get involved and really get familiar with Doc Rivers' schemes and all that. And that could take some time and maybe could lead to a rough stretch maybe in the beginning of the year. But this team, even after the loss of Damian Lillard, they're still a dark horse contender in the East, and we've said it basically every episode since the Jason Tatum injury and all these different things happened in the Eastern Conference. No Halliburton for the Pacers. That the East is wide open. There's no set guarantee that the Cavaliers are going to come out of the East or the Knicks are going to come out of the East because uh, we saw how they both floundered last year. there's no guaranteed, you know, finalists for the Eastern Conference that have been set. So I am confident that Giannis himself, regardless of what happens, can drag this team to 43 wins. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility or too much to ask for Giannis. But of course, it's not going to be him by himself. It's going to be with Myles Turner, with Bobby Portis, Gary Trent Jr., and Torian Prince, and Cole Anthony, Kevin Porter Jr. This team is deeper than most realize, and uh, still extremely skilled. I think Giannis, if anything, if he has one of his best seasons yet, which he's, being propped up to potentially have because he'll have a lot more point guard type responsibilities, um, he could drag this team to 43 wins. I would be, I'm not one to give gambling advice, and I never would, because I'm just not really that type of person. Don't really gamble too often. But I would hammer this over at 42 and a half. That's just a pretty ridiculous number for me. But moving forward, we are going to talk a little bit more about the roster and specifically how they did accomplish a pretty great goal, one that didn't really seem attainable to start the offseason, but in the end, it's what came true. And Fansided's Dalton Sell came out with an article referencing this and accomplishing the goal of getting younger. And he made a great point that revolved around Torian Prince and his re-signing, and the fact that Torian Prince is now officially the oldest player on the roster at 31 years old. And as he pointed out in his article, if you were to come up to any Bucks fan and say that, yeah, the highest or the oldest player on the team is going to be 31, considering that Brooke Lopez and Damian Lillard and Pat Connaughton, with all their departures now, that's just this is how it's shaked out. And it's pretty incredible, again, how the Bucks were able to maneuver their way to getting into more of a youth movement and youthful mindset. Because of course, the average age of this team is still going to be relatively high, with guys like Torian Prince and Giannis and Bobby Portis and even Myles Turner, who's getting up in age. He's already been in the league for a decade now. The youth movement is somewhat real, and of course, as the years keep going forward, they're going to have to be forced to use or utilize guys like Ryan Rollins a little bit more, and Chris Livingston, and maybe Tyler Smith gets his shot, his fair shot. So people really don't realize that they were able to level up in certain areas. The team remains pretty deep, and they were able to do it while getting younger. That I feel like some don't realize that this offseason was more of a win for the Bucks than you may think, even with the departures of Damian Lillard and Brooke Lopez. You didn't get back the exact production that a Damian Lillard can offer you, but you leveled up with Myles Turner and got younger with Myles Turner, and you have guys like, not saying Cole Anthony is the next Damian Lillard or anything, but you have these guys, three solid point guards that can shore up that rotation. And sure, the Kevin Porter Jr., Ryan Rollins, Cole Anthony combined are not Damian Lillard, but you'll at least have a little bit more variability with your lineup. You'll have a little bit more of a defensive edge with Ryan Rollins, and Cole Anthony's a spark plug offensive guy, that can just come in and drop 20 on any given night. So there's still room for the Milwaukee Bucks to regain some of that production that was lost with Dame and Myles Turner or and Brooke Lopez. But it's not like it's the best team in the East or anything. But there was a lot of positive stuff done this offseason to kind of get the Bucks back into a conversation of, are they a dark horse contender, and are they somewhat built for the future? And now that, piggybacking off of the Damian Lillard stretch and wave, Bucks on Sports Illustrated's Nelson Espinal, he dove into a recent quote from ESPN's Bobby Marks the other day, and that was regarding the Bucks' decision to waive and stretch Dame, and of course waive and stretch that huge contract. And he expanded upon the idea that Lillard's waive and stretch has and will continue to inspire other teams to use that provision on much larger contracts going forward. It's not just going to be, we're stretching and waiving a guy that had like 2 or 3 years and $9 million on his deal. This is going to be for guys that had, max money. And Bobby Marks said himself, prior to Lillard, Nicholas Batum in Charlotte had the largest per year cap hit of $8.9 million of a player stretched. But in the past month alone, $223 million in salary has been stretched, $100 million less than the total amount from 2013 all the way to 2024. Teams are willing to absorb eight-figure cap charges in the foreseeable future for the sake of creating cap space now, or in the case of the Phoenix Suns, escape financial purgatory. Of course, the Suns used that same wave and stretch provision on Bradley Beal not long after Damian Lillard received his. And you got to figure that with the amount of money that players are able to be paid now, with the cap space just increasing by like 9%, it seems, every year. Um, More and more guys are going to receive contracts that are going to be deemed some of the worst contracts in the league. And with the new CBA and with all these different rules and the tax aprons coming in, you're going to see guys with, making $30 million annually be deemed not worth that contract, and then the teams have no other choice but to waive and stretch a player with that magnitude or that, you know, scale of a contract. And it's kind of surreal to see that guys making that kind of money are going to be waived and stretched when this provision wasn't necessarily used all that often. And it seems like Damian Lillard, like, and the Bucks, they really broke into, or they kind of created a new way to save money. And they didn't invent the wave and stretch, but using it for a guy like Damian Lillard, that was a completely different thing. It's like they threw a curveball this offseason, and then the Suns, they kind of picked up on that idea and did the same thing with Bradley Beal. And now we're going to see more and more guys that we consider to be star players who can still provide a lot of great contributions to a winning team. Those guys are going to be waved and stretched if the team that they're currently on feels like they don't fit with their timeline, or if it's a similar situation to Dame where he's going to be injured and miss the entire rest of the year, and they just don't have the time to really wait for him to get back, and so they'll wave and stretch him. We're going to see a lot more of that in the future, and you can credit in at least a good portion of this kind of new wave of front office tactics to the Milwaukee Bucks and to John Horst for coming in and kind of being the first to be like, hey Dame, we're not going to have you for all of next season. We're still trying to compete with Giannis. We're just going to get you out of here right now on this wave and stretch provision to try our best to continue to build a contender because we know that you're not going to be here. So credit to John Horst and the Milwaukee Bucks for getting that done. But anyways, that will be it for me today. Thank you very much for watching another episode of Bucks Latest presented by FanArch. Again, I've been Dean Simon. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on those post notifications to stay up to date and in the know with all the latest Milwaukee Bucks updates. I will see you guys in the next one, and go Bucks.